The genre of indie horror games has sort of devolved in the past few years to become what it is today. What's supposed to be horrifying and scary is now cute and marketable, making this subgenre between actual horror games and trendy kids games that I like to call indie horror for kids. I guess child murder is cool now. I'm Melty Milo and let's talk about it. Games can have you experience things and emotions you would be unable to feel otherwise. Although some stories can have a tight grasp on a person, some might not be affected by such an experience, either because they don't understand it or perhaps they don't relate to it. But horror is a genre that's capable of making someone feel vulnerable and scared. Fear is a primal emotion pretty much all humans are capable of having, whether it be a dark, dimly lit hospital desolate of life, a haunted pizzeria chock full of furries, or perhaps... Unlike horror games produced by the massive AAA companies, indie games, at least in my opinion, have a much better capacity to strike fear into the hearts of unsuspecting players. There's multiple reasons as to why this is. For one, it's extremely easy to make a quote horror game. You just download your stock scary high school map from the Unity asset store, make it dark and scary, and then toss in a couple of jump scares. Easy. Or perhaps it's the fact that indie game developers have limitless potential. After all, who knows what they snuck onto your computer in that suspicious download link? Or in the case of my favorite type of indie horror, when someone takes an ordinary gameplay experience and just makes it a little bit off. Indie horror games have no shortage of amazing games released, but yet I find that the actually good and well-designed games get overshadowed by the popular and mainstream ones. If I had a nickel for every indie horror game title, not you, that was marketed toward kids and released with massive game-breaking bugs and fatal game design flaws, but yet managed to absolutely take over the YouTube scene, I would have 20 cents, which is surprisingly a lot. Ever since the astronomical success of Friday Night Freddy's, Ever since the astronomical success of Five Nights at Freddy's, indie games have adapted a very specific part of its formula. And that would be the merch potential, baby! Buy our limited time marketable plushies! Please note that by buying this item, you are agreeing to our policies and waive your right to sue or file a lawsuit against our company and acknowledge any kinds of possessed, evil, or haunted items. Not a fan? Then do you perhaps fit under any of these conditions? Then perhaps you should try buying our special NFTs. Yeah, does anyone find it just a little weird how fast these devs capitalize on their success? With Freddy's, it at least took them until the third game to start rolling out merch, and even then it was all entirely third-party licensed merch. Scott wasn't allocating that much of his time on making and managing it. He just focused on the games for the most part. I know game developers need to make money and all, especially since they aren't financed like the big AAA companies are. You see, FNaF really didn't end up becoming a merch machine until it had rightfully earned the platform and took time to develop the entire franchise. Bendy and the Ink Machine at least waited until they were a couple chapters in before merch started rolling in, unlike a certain game. You can really tell that the developers of these kiddie indie horror titles are adapting and are now likely actively planning and writing their games in such a way to be compatible with the merch lines. Merchandise potential shouldn't be that high of a priority. This is just my personal opinion, but it seems to me like the devs of these games have such a huge ego that they know they could sell out an incomplete game that has maybe 30 minutes of gameplay without actually having any substance to it. Oh, but no. The absolute merch madness is just the tip of my problems with the current kiddie indie horror genre. While merch is a matter of company ethics, I can look past it if the game is actually good. By the way, the games are not good. I lightly touched on it a second ago, but the marketability aspect affects the gameplay experience. You can pretty obviously tell what was designed with the intention of being scary, uncanny, and unsettling, and what was designed with the intention of being cute and marketable. Despite my previous praise of FNaF for handling its merch properly, I will now present the security breach character designs versus the second game designs. I chose FNaF 2 because Toy Freddy is definitely sort of reminiscent of Glamrock Freddy, and in comparison of both of these renders, one is clearly more attractive than the other. One is clearly more marketable than the other. Toy Freddy's eyes aren't quite looking straight, his wrist is bent at an angle that just looks wrong, his eyes are half closed with the full circular pupils being visible by the divot of his faceplate. He looks clunky, heavy, reminiscent of how the real animatronics look and operate. And then we look at Glamrock Freddy. He looks like a skinny Tumblr sexy man, and his build isn't reminiscent of how I remember those horrifying Chuck E. Cheese animatronics they're supposed to be emulating. Unlike Toy Freddy, his smile is tilted, so it looks human, instead of the uncanny stretched mouth on Toy Freddy. Just one watch at the admittedly stunning opening cutscene shows how fluid his movements look. Although the animatronics do get spookier versions of themselves later on in the game, it's kind of hard to be scared of them, because at that late in the game, you already got familiar and accustomed to the place, you already have all these weapons to use against them. Freddy makes the game trivially easy by being a walking invincibility suit. Okay, wait, this is a security breach video. Back on track, let's talk a little bit more about our biggest offender, Poppy Playtime. The same can be applied. These guys just aren't scary. Okay, wait, let me rephrase that. These guys are scary just for a split second. You see, anyone can make a game scary. All you gotta do is raise the ambiance a little, make things all quiet and calm for a bit. For example, let's showcase this playthrough by MatPat from
Game Theory.
That's cool. Go ahead. Yo! Oh, man. Oh, that's awesome. It's so good. It's so good.
He gets scared for a split second as Mommy. He gets scared for a split second as Mommy Longlegs jumps down the shaft before running away backwards. He doesn't look to where he's running, instead he just wants to look back down the hallway and stare at the monster chasing him. At several points he is looking back at her so much, he ends up backing into the wall and getting stuck, leading to his demise. How unscary does your monster have to be that people would rather gawk and stare at your monster in the eyes rather than properly running away from it? The game encourages this too. It gives you long hallways to walk down so you could specifically turn around and see them chasing you. You see, the original FNaF games encountered this as well, the problem becoming a jump scare simulator with the initial shock and ambiance gone due to oversaturation. However, the franchise embraced this and made quite literally a jump scare simulator. Scott Cawthon realized that the Freddy's cast just wasn't scary anymore, and he had to make something new. First, with Sixter Location bringing in a new formula every night so the players wouldn't get too comfortable. And by the time that Ultimate Custom Night came around and the VR game Help Wanted, they focused more on making the gameplay fun instead. What does the experience of Poppy Playtime give me? Its setting takes place in some factory. Its spooky monster jumps out and chases me. It makes me solve puzzles? Is the experience supposed to be the story? Well, who are our characters? We just have a bunch of disembodied YouTuber voices. We have the names of people, but we haven't even seen anyone but the monsters. Have the people turned into the monsters? What's the player's connection? Or did they just decide to return to their old workplace? Wait a minute. Am I talking about Poppy Playtime or Bendy and the Ink Machine? These games' wasted potential frustrates me so much. They only offer the bare minimum when it comes to the scare factor, and even then, they have no other substance. The gameplay consists of the most boring, buggy, glitchy messes I've ever played. Just a couple of examples, Kindly Beast, the developers of Bendy and the Ink Machine, acknowledged many game-breaking glitches in their main franchise, and then proceeded not to fix them. Another one, Poppy Playtime Chapter 2 was rushed out so fast, they neglected to fix two game-breaking glitches. One that soft-locked you, and the second that literally removed your audio. And when you have a Simon Says game, that's a problem. Hello Neighbor is so fundamentally broken that you essentially need to use a walkthrough to play the game and do box parkour, which, by the way, the boxes and the parkour mechanics, they suck. Do I really have to explain the problems that Security Breach has? Every everything that these kiddie indie horror games do is dictated almost entirely by YouTubers. Even if you have almost zero marketing budget, if a bunch of hotshot YouTubers play your games, that's huge. Although that does lead to a fair bit of ass kissing. Ahem. Hello neighbor. MatPat really did get the street on in his own video about it, but Hello Neighbor, Bendy, they literally changed their entire story and lore based entirely on what the theorists conjured. You can't just do that. Change the entire course of your game just because someone's theory was accurate. After all, it is just
A game theory.
To be honest though, can I even complain? The prime popular indie horror games have always been of pretty low quality. I mean, like, Sonic EXE literally only has one button. I love scary games. There's still good indie horror games. Phasmophobia, Doki Doki Literature Club, and one of my favorites, Little Nightmares. But you know, it is sad that better games like these are getting overshadowed by the pandering ones. Also, I'm not even gonna attempt discussing the ethics of marketing games about child murder to children. If you made it this far, first of all, thanks.